There's a growing number of people who, when buying a camera, look towards the ability of it for shooting 4K video. And I know probably about this point there's some people out there thinking, well, why do you need to shoot 4K anyway when nobody can tell the difference? Regardless of any of that, however, a common question I see people asking is regarding how to edit 4K video. Specifically, what sort of spec computer do you need to be able to edit 4K video? Now, realistically, that is a bit of an ambiguous question, a little bit of a red herring, because there's more factors to consider than are you shooting 4K video. Because at the end of the day, 4K is simply the branding as to how many pixels is the picture made up of. It doesn't go into factors like how much information is there for the computer to actually handle and how much information is the computer needing to handle to be able to edit the video footage. What I mean by that is if you think about your still images, if you try editing and loading raw files into a computer, your computer processes them a lot slower because the raw files are physically bigger files. It takes more processing power and more time for the computer to handle it. And the same logic applies when it comes to editing video. My phone can shoot 4K video, but the bitrate of the video that this produces is about 55 megabits a second. My camera can shoot 4K video footage up to 100 megabits a second. As a result, the file size is nearly double that on my camera than it is on my phone. So I did a bit of an experiment. So behind me here is my desktop computer. That's my main computer that I generally try and do all my work on. Now that's a custom built PC that I've had for a few years. The specifications of which are an Intel i7 processor, the 4930K model, which is a 6-core, 3.4 GHz processor, coupled with a GTX 980 Ti graphics card, 32 gig of RAM. I have a solid-state disk drive that I run Premiere Pro off, and then I also have a second solid-state drive which is acting as a scratch disk, which is essentially like having almost additional RAM that Premiere Pro can use to dump additional storage files if it needs it. So that's my main processing station. However, there's a lot of times where I'm not here to do editing. I might be staying at my girlfriend's, I might be staying away for work, but I still need to be able to edit my video files. So for when I'm working away, I have this, which is an Asus VivoBook S510UQ. The specs of this, by comparison, are an Intel i5-7200U, which is a quad-core 2.5 GHz processor, a 940MX graphics chip. It's now got 16 gig of RAM, but up until a week ago, it only had 8 gig of RAM. Now, here's a kicker as well. Inside this is an M.2 SSD drive where Windows and everything is stored, but that's not actually where I store all my video files. Because I'm regularly transferring projects from my desktop to my laptop and then my laptop back to my desktop and so on and so forth, generally I'm editing my projects off this, which is a Seagate 2TB HDD external drive. Now, on specs alone, based off what I've read off the internet, this should not be able to edit 4K video, and yet I do. There's a few important points to bear in mind, however. Firstly, when I'm editing on my desktop, I'm using a 4K display. This is only a 1080 display. So even though I'm editing a 4K video file, the computer never renders a 4K output. It only ever has to render 1080, so it can handle that a lot easier. Then there's another factor that when I'm editing, this cannot play back full resolution quality in Premiere Pro. It just cannot handle it. It bogs down. Now, my desktop computer can handle playing Premiere Pro, not a problem at all. It just eats it up for breakfast. This cannot handle full quality playback for very long. It can do it in very small bursts, but after a few seconds, it starts to seriously bog the computer down. So whenever I'm editing on this, generally I run the quality at a quarter to get a smoother playback. But that's not actually a problem, because 99% of the time I don't need to see a full quality output. So the experiment that I wanted to do is pitch this computer in the usual setup that I do with the files on an external hard drive against my desktop computer with the exact same video files and see what sort of a difference there is in rendering time. Now, initially I just did this with a small video clip file that I shot on my phone. So it was a minute-long video just out in my back garden, nothing moving, nothing special at all. All I did was I imported the video file into Premiere and then exported it into a different folder to see what sort of a difference in time it would take each computer. And while the desktop computer managed to render the complete file in 1:30, it took the laptop about 4 minutes to finish. I then put them to a much more extreme test. I gave them both the same project file for a recent video that I'd uploaded, the review of the Moza Mini Me gimbal. Now, that was actually edited and uploaded from this computer. The files are on this drive. So I copied the files from this drive to the desktop computer. I opened both projects up and exported them. Now, bearing in mind, that is not just one video clip. That's 10 minutes of multiple video clips and audio and effects all thrown in together. Now, generally when I export those videos, I export them to YouTube 1080 quality. So it gives me a 1080 resolution video with about a 16 megabit a second bitrate, which is what it recommends for YouTube. For this, however, I took it a notch further and I set it to YouTube 4K, which gives it a 4K resolution file at 40 megabits a second. As a result, the finished output files were predicted to be 2.8 gig. The desktop computer managed to render the full 4K output file in under 20 minutes. I knew full well the PC was going to handle it much quicker, it's blindingly obvious. The laptop, however, took over an hour. But the point I'm trying to make is, unless you are doing a hell of a lot of videos or you are under extreme time pressures, you don't realistically need that much of an expensive rig in order to be able to edit 4K video. I can edit videos at probably 90% of the speed on my laptop as I can on my desktop. Where the laptop falls behind is rendering that finished file. It takes a hell of a lot longer. But realistically, I'm not exporting that many video files all that often. So for the odd times that I am, I just set the laptop running, go and relax or do something else for half an hour or an hour or whatever, and it's finished. If you're having to export constant streams of video files, or you're doing one video file and then something else and then something else and then something else, then yes, you know, a bigger, more expensive desktop computer or a more powerful computer system is going to save you a hell of a lot of time. So that's it for this video. As always, if you have any questions or queries, comment box is down below. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for stopping by, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.